This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so now this session will be recorded. I'm still facing some technical glitches with the GoToMeeting, so hopefully everything will be all right in for the next 1 hour. So guys, just some housekeeping tasks. So first of all, thank you so much everyone who participated or who donated for that COVID relief fund. So if I'm missing any of your name, just let me know. I will add into that Excel sheet. Okay. Second thing regarding some feedbacks. So last time I received some feedback like the audio quality is not good. So this time I'm trying with my new headset. So let me know how it goes. Third thing, there are few complaints like, or not complaints, but actually a feedback. Like some people are saying that the session is going beyond 1 hour. So for today, I will strictly end the session at 1 hour. And if there's something which is going to extend beyond 1 hour, we can do it. We can try to do it on the next day. So if there's some spillover item, let's try to do it on Sunday. Okay. And I think I have one more thing to discuss, but I'm not remember the top of my head. Okay. So let's get started. So today's session is all about AWS networking. Okay. And yeah, sorry, I got one more feedback. Uh, I am going to pause after every 15 or 10 minutes or 5 minutes, depending upon the session or the topic which we are discussing. So I'm going to know from your feedback or your experience, like what type of questions you guys have received during the interview. I mean, these are all things which these are all the questions which we are going to discuss, all the questions which we are going to discuss today. This is based on my experience, or I browse through the internet and find it out like these are the different questions, either via the Google search or via the other forums or the Stack Overflow. So I mostly want to know based on your experience, like what are the different questions you have faced during the interview. Okay. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So the topic for today, as you guys know, is AWS networking. Okay. And honestly, guys, I'm not a networking guy. I'm mostly a system guy who know a little bit about networking. So if I stuck somewhere, I mostly rely on few of you guys who knows more about networking or who's mostly working on the networking domain. Okay. So before deep dive into any of the topic, or let me throw some of the topic which we are going to discuss today. One is VPC, which is a virtual private cloud. Second is we are going to spin up two instances in this virtual private cloud. One is in the public subnet, and second one is in the private subnet. If these terms seems to be alien for you, don't worry, we are going to discuss all these terms. The third thing
Prashant,
which we are going to
we
yeah,
can see your
sorry.
screen.
Oh, sorry. Let me share my screen. You. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yep, it's good. Yep.
Yeah. So third topic is difference between a security group and network access control list. And fourth thing is AWS or VPC endpoint, where we are going to discuss between the gateway versus the interface endpoint. Okay. But before uh, getting started, I want to discuss it with you guys few things. So this is nothing related to the interview, but based on my experience. So are you guys aware of this? The the AWS calculator, the monthly charge calculator? Sorry, Prakash, I shared the screen. Okay. So while this is loading, let me share you one of my experience. Okay. So honestly, most of the time which I have worked on the AWS platform, it is been set up by someone else. But I think 4 or 5 years back, I got an opportunity to design one of the projects independently. And while designing the different components, okay, For example, I sit with the application team and decided that, okay, this is the instance family which we need to use. This is the EPS volume. A bunch of things we have decided, and then we use this calculator to find it out what is the cost being involved in different components. And like we all know, most of the time, all those products or all those projects are not heavily funded. So we need to be really careful, like where we are exactly spending our money. Okay. Why this is not loading? Are you guys still able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Why this AWS calculator is loading on my different browser. Let me try on different browser. Okay. I want to show you guys one thing. I don't know why this is not loading. All the other things are good. Okay, let's wait for this while this is loading. Okay, so the point I'm trying to drive here. So I told you, like, I sit with the application team, try to design the whole architecture, and in that whole architecture, we took care of all those things. For example, we need, like, for example, 10 EC2 instance, this much amount of EPS volume. On the back end, we need RDS. So basically, all those things we have designed. But the one thing which I have missed, and this is one of the key takeaway whenever you are planning to design an infrastructure, is that in AWS, any data which is coming to AWS, which means, for example, you set up an EC2 instance, right? And you have your 1P data center. I mean, your first party data center where you have so far hosted your stuff, and you're planning to migrate your 1P data. Let me put this arrow this way. So if you are planning to migrate all your applications from your
Hey,
first
Prashant,
party data center.
your screen is
Screen.
stuck.
Yeah.
We are still looking at that S3 calculator screen.
Okay, sorry guys, I know it's an internet issue.
Yeah, I'm able to see it on my end, but I'm not sure because I just clicked the link.
I guess it's an issue at my end. It's something.
Now it's good, Prashant. We can see your screen now.
You can see my screen.
We can see the.
Yeah. Sorry about that, man. This internet is pretty bad in my area. Okay. Sorry. So let's go back to this point. So once again, the point I'm trying to drive here. So you are trying to migrate your data from your 1P data center or your first party data center to EC2 instance, let's say. So any data which is coming to AWS. So let's say you started a rsync job or SCP job or whatever job you have started, or you have a lot of data. So in that case, you need to go with a snowball. So let's say for the timing you have doesn't have that much amount of data, and you're trying to copy that data to AWS. So any data which is coming to AWS, AWS is not going to charge you a single penny, no charge. But when you try to access that data, that means data going out from AWS. So let's say you set up a website and now you're trying to access that data. Okay, that is charged. And that thing I missed. So please remember this, because the budget or the ballpark number I gave it to my finance team, it goes way beyond that. So let me show you, and that's why I want to show you with the help of that calculator. So this is one of the way you can calculate the cost before you started setting up your environment. Now AWS is migrating something called AWS pricing calculator, which I haven't used it so far. But let me stick with a simple calculator. Let me increase the font size. So if you scroll down, and let's say I told you guys data transfer in is of no cost. So let's say I'm transferring like 1000 or a 1 TB per month. So if you see above, my billing cost is still 0. But let's say I'm trying to take data out from AWS. Now you will see 88.65. So remember this point while designing any infrastructure using AWS. And unfortunately, the application which I was working, it's a kind of a backup application. So you can think like 1 TB of data, rather than transferring out, it is doing like more than a 1 TB per day. So our cost or the ballpark number I gave it to those guys, it turned out to be this much above. And I'm not telling like it's 1 TB, it's more than 1 TB, it's much more than 1 TB. So just one thing you guys know before designing anything in AWS. Okay. Just one more thing quickly. I know, like for example, the people learn from their experience or mistake. Last year I designed one more infrastructure or one more application, and there I did one more mistake. So thing is, I was trying to design an application which is a kind of a legacy application, and the problem with that legacy application is that it has some kind of a license restriction, and that's why it can only be done on a dedicated host. Okay, so let me ask you guys, any one of you in AWS terminology know what is the difference between a dedicated host versus dedicated instance? Anyone know what is the difference between dedicated host and dedicated instance? And then in the meanwhile, I will show you. So for example, let's choose any of these instance family. At that time, I remember I was using this M4 16x large. Okay. And if you go to the advanced option, unfortunately, this calculator does not tell me about the dedicated host. It can only tell me about the dedicated instance. And I did all the calculation based on the dedicated instance. And once again, our billing number after 1 month, or I guess this time I was monitoring every day, it's something way off what we have calculated. Okay. So two things you guys remember. First, the data in versus data out. And second is like this one. So I will pause for 10 seconds. Anyone know like what is the difference between a dedicated host versus dedicated instance? Anyone? Are you guys still there?
Yeah, I think so. Whether it is right or not, I can tell you like a dedicated host means like in a physical mission, like we are they're going to dedicate on particular mission, so we can
Hmm.
create any multiple instances. I think so. Dedicated instances it's a one part of a, like one image in dedicated host. I think so.
Yep, you're correct.
Thank
So
you.
let me, yeah, thanks, man. So let me give you a simple example. So let's say AWS provide a different family, instance family. First one is the on-demand. So let's say I spun up this EC2 instance on AWS, and I'm going with the on-demand, which is a default type. So in this case, if I spun up this instance on AWS, there may be some other company. So let's say my company name is A, and I spun up the instance. So this instance can go to any hypervisor, okay? And it will spun up the EC2 instance for us. In Let's say there's a guy from company B, he tried to spin up some instance that can go to any hypervisor, the same thing, or to the same hypervisor, and he can spin up his instance. So this is the problem with our dedicate with our on-demand instance, that we are sharing the hypervisor with other companies. And honestly, it's not a problem. Like AWS did a very good thing, that there's always a isolation happens between a company A versus company B. Then let's talk about dedicated hosts. So like as somebody mentioned, dedicated host means a physical server. Think of like a physical server. It's completely dedicated to you. The last one is a dedicated instance. Okay. So what happens in case of a dedicated instance? It still act like a virtual machine, but if you are a company A, you are spinning up a EC2 instance. Only your company's EC2 instance can come on this hypervisor. This hypervisor will not be shared with any other company. Okay, that is clear. So dedicated host, you can think like a like the way we are setting up our infrastructure before the cloud era. We have one physical machine and we are installing our software on the top of it. But in case of a dedicated instance, they are going to dedicate a hypervisor for us. And in that hypervisor, only my company EC2 instance can spin up. Okay. In case of dedicated host, the thing which I've showed you with the help of this calculator, which is not showing us, AWS, depending upon the instance type family, they are going to charge us $2 per hour just to hold that dedicated host for us. Okay. So that extra hours we need to take into consideration. Okay. That is clear? If that part is clear and there's no question, so
I
you
have
can.
one question about this. Sorry.
Mhm.
In which scenarios we should use the dedicated host, and in which scenario we should use this dedicated instance?
Okay, so like I can tell you based on my experience where I use this dedicated host. So we have one legacy application which is license dependent, that it can only be done on one physical hardware. So in that case, you can use a dedicated host. In some other cases where I see people are using dedicated hosts, for example, the Oracle. Oracle, I know is in terms of license, it's a kind of a mystery. So people who are deploying the RAG cluster, they are using a dedicated host. Except for that, I do not see, or if you have some of the compliance requirement that only your instance can run on that hypervisor. But in that case, for example, if you are paying like a $2 per hour for that particular instance type family, these instance family are always expensive. Dedicated hosts are most expensive. Dedicated instance is little bit expensive. And on demand, we all know like it is the cheapest option. Is that answers your question?
Yeah, thank you.
In which scenario we use spot instance? I can give you like a copybook kind of a response where you believe that your load can be, for example, if you're running a batch kind of a load, which can be interrupted. In those cases, we can use a spot instance. Okay. I know this is a kind of a off topic, and I'm planning to take one more session related to compute. So let's back to the main thing which we want to discuss it today, which is a VPC or a AWS networking. Okay. So what is VPC? So VPC stands for, we all know, is a virtual private cloud, right? So I know there are a lot of definition on the internet, like what exactly is a VPC, but I can give you guys my own definition. So the thing is, if you think before this pre-cloud era, like when we have our own data centers, right? And we are deploying our application or a hardware or a server over there. Okay. And most of the companies, we generally have three kind of environment. One is QA, right? Then we have the dev environment, and then we have the prod environment. At least these three environments, right? So think of VPC as your one data center. One VPC is equal to one data center. So you can create one VPC for a QA environment, and it's always a good idea to isolate your environment so that your changes from a QA cannot be accidentally pushed to prod or vice versa. Vice versa, I think it's okay, but generally we need some kind of isolation between these environments so that we cannot push unintended changes to these data centers. Okay. And the difference with the VPC, for example, you can think of like if you need to set up your own data center, it may take at least 6 months. But deploying a VPC is just a matter of few minutes. We can do because we are not taking a physical thing into consideration. It is just an API calls which we are doing to the AWS. Okay. Now, in this whole word VPC, the most important word is the private. Okay. And why I'm paying special emphasis to this word private, because when you set up your VPC, that VPC is completely under your control. Okay. With your control, I mean you have a full liberty to choose whatever the CIDR range need to be for that particular VPC. Okay. So network and CIDR range. If you, we are going to discuss about all these things, like how we are going to choose this network or CIDR range. And you have a complete control, like inside this network or CIDR range, if you choose a subnet, if let's say you split up this entire VPC into subnet A, subnet B, subnet C, so you have the complete liberty to choose if subnet A can talk to subnet B or subnet B can talk to subnet C or vice versa. Okay, so it's completely private.
Yeah, I have a one question. Sorry for interrupting you. Yeah, when we can create a customized DC, like we have some data centers by customized, defaultly given by AWS data centers. So we have to define for particular data center. I can define any name for data center.
I mean, this is just for a tag, and that is the next thing we are going to discuss. All those default VPC
Yeah.
versus a custom VPC.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
give me
thank
2
you.
minutes. We are going to discuss all
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So if you need to see the VPC, you need to go to the services section, and the way I do it is search for this VPC. Okay, so let me go to the region which is near to me, which is Oracle. Okay, it doesn't matter. So when you first set up your AWS account, a default VPC will be created for you. Okay, so if you go here, this is a default VPC which has been created for you. Like the question which has been asked just before this, like the problem with this VPC, or let me say, if you are starting AWS, if you are new to the AWS, this is the perfect place for you to start. The good thing about this VPC, it has all the subnet which is associated with this VPC, they are all public. Okay, so that means you set up your server and you can easily access those servers via browser or those things, with the exception that you need to open the security group. But this is a perfect place to start. Okay, now why we need a custom VPC if we have this default VPC which comes with our account? So why we want to create our own VPC? So like I told you, this VPC has public subnet. Okay, let's say I want to deploy a database server, which can be Oracle or MySQL or anything. And generally, most of the time when we deploy our database server, it should be on the private subnet, right? So that is one of the main reasons. Or even if you want, for example, I'm deploying a dev or a QA environment, and I don't want that dev or a QA environment to be exposed to the public internet. So in those cases, I need my own custom VPC. Okay. So let me go to some other, where can I go? Let me go to Singapore. Okay. So from this drag and drop box, you can go to any AWS region. And if it's load, so here you can see even for this region also you have this default VPC. Now this is not related to interview, but this was a famous question in, if you guys wrote any of the AWS exam, what will happen if you delete this default VPC? So I can delete it. Okay. And earlier there was no way to recover this VPC. That if I deleted the default VPC, you need to contact the AWS support, and those guys can recover that VPC for you. And that I'm talking like, I started using AWS in 2012, and at that time, this is what we need to do. We need to contact AWS support, and they will recover this default VPC for us. Now, it's just a matter of this click. Let me go back. I can go to this action tab and go to this create default VPC. And just in few minutes, I can recover that VPC. So it's available back to me. Okay. So when I was browsing through the internet, there are few places where I found out like there are some old threads where they are still saying that this is not possible. But telling you guys, in AWS, things are changing so rapidly that this is now possible. Okay. Now, this is one more thing which is based on my experience. Like I told you guys, for example, AWS has these multiple regions. And right now, if you don't understand these regions, these means the different data centers they have in Virginia, in Ohio, or North California, and all the way up to the Sao Paulo. AWS, by default, when you set up this account, they create this default VPC for you in each and every region. Okay. And this is one other problem that I faced based on my experience, that, for example, if I'm setting up my environment or if I'm setting up my infrastructure, I know in which region I need to deploy. And in most of the cases, I deploy my infrastructure which is closest to my customers. So for example, if my customers are all in the East Coast, most of the time I'm going to deploy this infrastructure either in US East, North Virginia, US East 1, or US East, Ohio. Okay. And this is the problem mostly with the dev environment, where developers, they are trying to spin up their infrastructure in any of the region. And when you start spinning up those infrastructure, that will incur a cost, you guys know. So what I highly recommend for you guys, go to this IAM console. And again, this is just off topic, but this is really important if you want to save costs. And go to this account settings. And there you have the option to deactivate the region which you don't want. So for example, I know most of my customers or all of my developers who is sitting here, they are never going to create an instance in the Tokyo region. So why I need that? So I can simply deactivate that region. So with deactivating that region means no one can spin up any resource in that region. Okay. And I face this issue a lot of time where developers, they are trying to spin up their resources in any of the region. For example, I don't know, one of my developers, he tried to spin up the resources in this Canada region. And we never have any presence for Canada region. Also, if somebody wants to check, I have one Lambda script which runs every 10 p.m. on the dev environment, which sees if there is any instance which is in the up and running state, and it will just try to stop that instance, and it will boot up that instance every morning, every next day at 9 a.m. So for our dev environment, we set up that kind of a policy that means I know most of my developers, they don't work after 10 p.m., right? And after that, we have some kind of a change management process where if anybody wants to if anybody wants that any instance, specific instance, we put them in an exception list so that my script doesn't shut down those instances or my Lambda code doesn't shut down those instances. But this is also critical just in terms of saving costs. Deactivate that region so that no one can spin up any resources in that region. Okay, that is clear?
Yes.
Okay. So next thing is when we are planning to deploy our VPC, the first thing we need to decide is what is the CIDR range we are going to choose, which is a classless internet domain routing. And the one website I always prefer for that is CIDR.xyz. Okay, let me ping you guys that website. Okay. In this website, depending upon my requirement or thinking about all the future growth, I try to set up my CIDR range for that particular VPC. So let's say I want something which is like I'm expecting a growth in this particular subnet or in this particular VPC, and I need at least like 10 to 15,000 servers or 60,000 servers, let's say. So I will go with this 10.0.0.60. So when I choose this subnet range or the CIDR range, I will get like 65,536 IPs. Okay, and let me ping you guys this. So in case of AWS, you can choose from any of these three CIDR range. And anyone know why we have these three CIDR range? 10.0.
Because these are private class A, class B, class C CIDR ranges.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, these are private IP or private ranges. And the minimum you can choose is /16, and the max you can choose is /28. And we will see why we can choose only between these ones. Okay. So depending upon.
Sorry for the disturbance. Actually, how the cost it will be if I want to create like a 3 VPCs and 4 VPCs, how it will be cost?
Yeah, so for that purpose, you need to go to this subnet calculator. Did I close that? So you need to go to the VPC section and need to calculate the cost. So each VPC is going to cost you. I'm not seeing where the VPC section.
That's there. Amazon VPS is there. You scroll down. Yeah.
So you need to give all this information to while doing this calculation. Your VPC connection, net gateway, if you are using private link, and the most important is the data transfer. So every VPC obviously will cost you something.
So how we can calculate the data transfer? Means is there any space? Maybe networking team is going to provide that information to us.
Your networking team or your application team? I always get some kind of a ballpark number from those guys, and I always ask in terms of hour, like per hour, how much data you can expect, data transfer you can expect.
Okay.
So let's say if they are saying 1 GB, I always take 1.5 GB into consideration, just giving plus and minus.
Okay.
And always try to give the higher value, so that in case if the cost is higher, then I don't need to talk to the finance team and say, oh, why this cost is higher.
Okay. Thank you.
So data transfer here means we are considering only outgoing data, right?
Exactly. Data transfer in, no cost. Data transfer out, we need to incur some cost. Okay. And just to be clear, one thing is data transfer, and there is called intra-region data transfer. And this VPC peering. Okay, let's not go into it. Tomorrow I think I have a session for you guys where I'm going to show you this VPC peering intra-region. So tomorrow let's discuss about this. Okay. So we can choose out of these 3 ranges, subnet ranges, and that completely depend upon my infrastructure, whatever I'm going to choose. So let's say I need a smaller IP ranges. I need to deploy a small subset of instances. In that case, I can choose 192.168.0.24. So in this case, I will get only 256 IP. Okay. One more thing, just based on my experience, always whenever you are trying to decide a CIDR range, let's say I'm deciding 10.0.0.60. Okay. Please always talk to your network team. I know this is all networking stuff, so anyway, you need to talk to your networking team. The most important thing is, in future, let's say I have this VPC1 and I need to set up, I know we are jumping a gun ahead, but if I need to create a VPC2, okay, let's say in some other region. And if I want these 2 VPC to communicate to each other, there's a thing called VPC peering. And now we have one more thing called transit gateway. These technology or these things will not work if you have the overlapping CIDR range. With overlapping CIDR range means for VPC1 you choose this 10.0.0.60, and in VPC2 also you are choosing this 10.0.0.60. And just to be clear, you can choose the same subnet range for different VPC. So whenever this is one use case. The second use case is, for example, you have this VPC. Let me go here. You have this VPC, and then you have your first party data center. And I'm not going to discuss more about it, but let's say if you want to communicate to the, if you want a communication or you want a connection between your VPC and first party data center, most of the time you go with a solution like VPN, right? Or direct connect, right? So in that case also, your CIDR range should not overlap. There are workarounds for this, means you can do with the help of NAT. But I will say, before designing your infrastructure, please talk to your networking team to figure it out that the CIDR range which you are going to use for your VPC should not overlap with any of your first party data center or any of your existing VPC if in future you want those 2 VPC to communicate to each other. Is that part is clear?
Yes.
Prashant, one question. Sorry to interrupt. But you said earlier, if we have 2 different VPCs, we can use the same subnet range, same first parity in this example. But in this, you are saying only the first parity we cannot use for a different VPC in order to communicate.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. You can use, but it is not recommended.
Okay, got it.
If you want those two, be in future, if you want those to communicate to each other, then in that case, it will not. Tomorrow I will show you with the help of a demo, like what is the kind of error you will see if you are trying to use the same subnet range.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think this is enough of the theory. Let's try to create our first VPC and then we will see. Okay. So for the purpose of this demo, let's try with the highest IP range, which is 10.0.0.60. 0.16, in which I told you like we are going to get 65,000, and then we are going to this is for my VPC CIDR. Okay. Then I'm going to split up this whole VPC into smaller subnets, which is 10.0.1.0/24. And the reason for splitting up into a different subnet is to provide a high availability. Now, how we are going to do that? Okay. So earlier I showed you guys we have a different region in AWS. One is Oregon, which is US West 2. This is a AWS region. And even inside this region, they have a different data center, which in AWS term, you can say availability. So what we are going to do, we are going to use this as our main CIDR for VPC. And then we are going to have a two subnet. One is 10.1.10.1.0.24. And second one is 10.2.0.24. One in US West 2A, and second one is US West 2B. Okay. So I think it will be clear when I'm going to show you with the help of the example.
Prashant, I have one doubt. Can I go ahead?
Sure.
Prashant, while creating VPC, your VPC range is 10.0.0.16. So it will generate around 65,000 IPs actually in that VPC. Yes. So actually, when we create it, we don't use the 65,000 IPs actually. Practically speaking, we don't use the 65,000 IPs range. So when we what is the necessity to use /16 there?
There is no necessity. You can use 192 or 172 also. So let's try to create this VPC.
No, Prashant. You give /16. /16 means it will generate around 65,565 IPs actually. So in practical, we don't use 65,575 IPs actually in that VPC.
Yeah. So that's what I told you guys. 16 is the minimum you can go. The maximum you can go to 28. So you can create your VPC using, for example, /24. You don't need to go to that number. But in that, sorry, not here, but in the VPC CIDR. But after that, you need to go to 25, let's say, or 26 or whatever the number you want to go. Because this is your main VPC CIDR block, and then you are subnetting it into a lower level.
Okay.
So this is not a requirement.
So minimum is 16, maximum is 28. We have to use this VPC CIDR within this range only.
Yeah, and I want to show you why we can go only between 16 and 28. So just give me 1 minute. I want to show you with the help of this demo. Okay. So let's try to set up our first VPC, and then I know these doubt will be clear for you guys. So click on your VPC, and let me show you one more time. Don't go with this launch VPC wizard, because if you go with this launch VPC wizard, you are not going to learn anything. So this cancel and exit. Go to your VPC, and this is really critical in terms of your interview. And if you are planning to write any of the AWS certification, you must need to know VPC by heart. This is one of the most important things which they ask you during the interview or during any of the certification exam. So first step is create VPC. Okay. This say my test VPC. Okay, I can give it any name. CIDR block. Let's stick with that. 10.0.0.16. Okay. And I don't want to go with this IPv6 block. Honestly, I never worked on the IPv6, and I have never deployed any VPC with IPv6. All those you guys who are aware of this interface, earlier we cannot use IPv6. We can only use IPv6, which is provided by Amazon. But now they are giving us the ability to use IPv6 CIDR, which is owned by me, which is bring your own IPv6. So this is something new for me, but honestly, I never use IPv6, so I am just going with a no IPv6 CIDR block. And that's it, created. So just within a few clicks, you have your own first VPC up and running. Okay, so just pause here for a minute. And this interface is a kind of a clinky, so let me go here. Still no, so I might need to refresh this. And let's explore this VPC one by one. So we have our VPC created and we will get this ID, which is the VPC ID. Okay, let's not worry about all these things. First thing is, the moment you create a VPC, the few things are created for you by default. And the first thing is route table. So what is this route table? If you click here, you will see a route called 10.0.0. which is targeted to a local. So what this means is all this traffic between the local subnet is allowed. That is, if the traffic which is being routed to this local subnet, I mean, if I'm going to spin up any instance in this subnet or in this CIDR range, this is allowed by default, provided there should be allowed within the security group. Okay, so let's not worry about security group at this stage. Just understand that the moment you create this VPC, this route table is created for you by default, and all the local traffic is allowed within this network range. Okay, first point. Second point is this network ACLs. So let me talk about this network ACLs. So let's go here. Okay, so I created this VPC, and the moment I created this VPC, the first thing which is created for me is route table, right? The second thing is NACL, which is a network access control list. And third thing is called security group. These three things are created for me by default by AWS when I created this VPC. Now, what are these things? So we can go to a technical definition of all these things, but let me go with my own definition. So let's say you created this instance, okay? And think of in terms of Linux, you have a firewall, right? And that firewall, think of like a software firewall, IP tables. I think anyone of you who worked on Linux is aware of this IP tables, right? And then this instance is connected to your router. And at the router level, or you have some firewalls. So you have a two level of protection. One at the instance level, which is your software-based firewall, and one at the router level. So NACL, at this stage, you can think of this router firewall, and IP tables, you can think of like security. Just to give you guys an oversimplified explanation. Okay, we are going to look at all of these things one by one, but just to give you the upper level idea, this is how it's going to work. At the instance level, you can have your own firewall, which is a security group, and then at the router level, you have something called network access control list. And honestly, in my last 8 years of my career, I never touched this NACL because during the time of debugging, it increased one more level of complexity. So I always have my security group implemented, and then I'm going to rely on my networking team to give me that level of protection, right? That they are the one who will think, or they are going to set up their own policy, what is allowed and what is denied. Okay, so in my case, I always have my NACLs all open. At the security group, I'm going to filter it out, what is allowed for my instance, what is denied for my instance. And if still it is not clear to you guys, I have a special session just to discuss about the security group versus a NACL. Okay. So now we have deployed our VPC using this CIDR range, right? Now we need to split it up in form of a subnet. And how can we do that? Is just clicking on this subnet tab, go to create subnet, either click here or click here. Okay. And make sure you choose your test VPC. Availability zone, I'm choosing US West 2A. And I am giving it a name tag as public server. Okay. So what I did, I choose a name tag. I selected the VPC. I give it a name, availability zone, which we have already discussed, that to provide the high availability. And IP CIDR, I'm choosing this. Just to be clear, giving any subnet a name public subnet does not make it public subnet. We need to do few things to make it as a public subnet. But just for the sake of simplicity, I'm giving it a name public subnet. Okay. So let's create it. Okay. Then we have discussed that to provide the high availability, we need to define one more subnet, which I'm giving it a name private subnet. Once again, this is just a naming. This subnet is not private, or let me correct myself. By default, if you are not asserting a subnet to any of the route table, it is private by default, which we are going to see it just in few minutes. This is my test VPC. The earlier subnet I deployed in US West 2A. So I'm trying to deploy it to US West 2B. Okay. I want to show you one more thing. If at this moment, if you are trying to deploy your VPC or your subnet in US West 2B, your US West 2B may be different from my US West 2B. What I mean by that, if you click here and check at this line, US West 2B, US W2 AZ1. Okay, what that means is even within that availability zone, this availability zone, US West 2, okay, and sorry, US West 2A. So if you think that the initial instinct is like whoever who wants to deploy it VPC or whoever who wants to deploy it subnet, they will try to deploy it first on US 2A. Means that is nothing technical, but just a human instinct. Okay. So what AWS will did even within this US West 2A or US West 2B, they are trying to split up the load into different data centers. So AWS under the hood within that US West 2A, they have a different data center. They have one, they have two. So if your request comes in, it might land up in one of these data centers. So just to distribute the load, they are using this internal naming scheme, this US West 2 AZ1 or US West 8 AZ2, all these under the hood. Okay. And then 10.0.2.
Prashant, you are deploying in two different availability zones, right? The
yes.
Private and the public one.
Yeah, this is just a name. It's not public or private. We are going to see how we are going to make it public and private.
Okay. Same region, two different availability zones.
Yes, correct. And just to be clear, because you asked this question, VPC cannot span to multiple regions. It's a regional construct. So both of these availability zone, you must need to specify in a single region. But if you go to the Google Cloud, they support multi-region VPC. But that feature is not available in AWS.
Okay.
Okay. And if you want more explanation on that, I asked one of the AWS representative, and he said that it's because of some legal reason they are not creating that kind of a VPC. So, for example, in Europe they have some GDPR compliance, so they don't want any data to be synced between US and Europe. That's why they are not supporting this multi-region VPC, but Google supports it. Okay.
Google supports it. They should have also same GDPR policies, right? I'm just hypothetically thinking. Those policies are same for everybody, right? It's not just for Amazon or for Google.
Yes, but I know they support multi-region VPC, but what are the reason behind it? I don't know. Under the
okay.
Okay. So far we have created our VPC CIDR. We have deployed these two subnets, public and private subnet. Now, the next thing which we need to create is something called Internet Gateway. Okay. So let's create it, and then we are going to discuss what exactly is the Internet Gateway. So I will say my test IGW, create. Move it. You will see that my test IGW showed up here. And by default, it is in detached state. So what I need to do is attach it to my VPC. One thing, I want to show you guys one more thing. So let me create my test IGW1 just for some. And let me try to attach it to the existing VPC. No Z form. Okay. So this is one of the famous AWS certified architect exam question. They will throw you some scenario where they will say that you have a multiple IGW and you are trying to connect to a VPC. You cannot connect multiple internet gateway to a single VPC. One VPC equal to one IGW. Okay, so let me delete this. So now we have connected this IGW to our VPC. So what this IGW will do? So we have this VPC and we have connected this IGW. Okay, or let me first assign it to our subnet, and then we will discuss how this IGW comes into picture. So we have so far our VPC CIDR, we have our public subnet, and we have our private subnet. Okay. So, okay, let's discuss about this IGW first. So private subnet, we haven't specified it yet, but as you can think of in terms of like what exactly it's going to do, it's going to have give a instance IP which is private. So like we discussed it earlier. Let's say I need to set up a database instance. So generally, database instance, it is not exposed to the public internet. So I'm going to specify that subnet which is private to this database. And then we have this public subnet where you can think like, let's say I'm deploying my web instances, which is exposed to the public internet. Okay. But one thing, and I think this will not be clear to you till we start deploying our instance. So when you deployed your instance, and if you log into that instance, and if you run the command like, for example, ifconfig or ipaddr, you will see that that instance only have the private IP. Okay. You guys can check it if you have any instance up and running right now in the AWS. So what Internet Gateway will do, so like I told you guys, we have this private IP. Okay. But let's say I have, and this private IP, I'm talking in terms of any instance which is even deployed in the public subnet. So an instance which is deployed in the private subnet only have this private IP, but the instance which is deployed in public subnet both have this public IP as well as private IP. But if you log into that instance, you can only see a private IP. And the reason for that is AWS is using something called split DNS behind the scenes. So what it will do, depending upon from where your request is generating. So for example, this we are going to see with the help of practical when I will deploy an instance on the top of this VPC. So depending upon from where the request is generating, it will show you the IP. So with what I mean, if the request is generating within the AWS infrastructure, why they want the request will go all the way to the internet. Okay. So in that case, it's going to show you the private IP. But if, for example, if I'm trying to access any AWS instance from my desktop or from my laptop, that means the request is generating from outside world, that is from the public subnet or from the public internet. In that case, it is going to show me the public IP. So don't worry about it if you do not understand this concept. I'm going to show you with the help of practical example tomorrow. It's already 9, so I know I told you guys we will stop at 9, but let's finish this, at least this VPC topic, and whatever the topics which we have left, we are going to discuss it tomorrow. Is it fine for everyone? Just need 10 more minutes and then we will wind it up.
Sure.
Yeah, you can.
You can continue, Nosh.
Okay. So instance which is a part of a public subnet have both private IP and public IP. And like I told you guys, if you go to the instance, it only have the private IP assigned to it. So what IGW will do, Internet Gateway, under the hood, it's do something called network address translation. So when the request leaves from this server, it has this private IP assigned to it. But when it is going out, the source IP is private. Okay. And let's say from this server, I want to access Google. So in that case, the destination IP is Google public IP, right? So what it will do, it's going to flip that IP to a public IP on the return request. Because Google doesn't know about our internal IP, right? So it do a smart thing. It change that private IP in the source field. With the source field, I mean in your packet header field. It change that private IP to a public IP, route that traffic on the return back path. Again, it change that public IP to a private IP, and that is how your packet will reach to your instance. So under the hood, it's just doing a simple netting, but it is doing that intelligently. Any doubt regarding this? So that is the main work of Internet Gateway, how to route your packet to the external world. And then we have one more concept called netting, which we are going to see tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, SSL will be going to take this private IP and they're going to cover this like private IP address, and it will show the SSL IP address to communicate with the outer source IP address, I think so.
How does SSL comes into this picture?
No, I just want to know that in networking concept, I just saw that one. That's why I asked you. Is it right or wrong? Just ask good question.
Okay, I mean SSL has nothing to do. It's just depend upon in which. So you have like a OSI model. So in each and every stage you have those header appended to your packet, right? So this is something which has happened at layer 4, where your at layer 3, where it's going to do all these translation for you. So if you're talking about the HTTPS layer, that's a layer 7, where you have all the application running.
Yeah.
Prashant, one query. So you told that private to public IP mapping will be done on this gateway, but if public IP is already assigned, so still this gateway will do the mapping, or it will check that this IP is allowed to send the traffic out to the. So all these settings will be configured in this network gateway. Two questions. So first is public. Yeah, first is like public IP if it is already assigned to a system. So again, it will go via gateway, right? And there will be no mapping happening.
But how can you assign a public IP to an instance? You're talking about the EIP, or you're just talking about the normal way? Because if you log into any of the AWS instance, you will see only the private IP on that instance.
Okay. So this gateway will only have a public IP assigned, right? In that case.
I mean, so if you go to this gateway, let me go to this, you will not see anything assigned to it. This is kind of a black box to all of us. This is something which is managed by AWS.
So because you were saying if we are accessing Google and then it will give the return address as a public IP, so it is all internally managed. You are saying we are not conferring any public IP onto the gateway.
Nothing. We are not doing anything. It's just going to translate. It knows like the packet source is this IP, this private IP. So the
Okay.
whole responsibility of this internet gateway is to make sure that the packet is reaching to the right destination or the right source from where this packet is getting originated.
Okay, so it means if a second instance of the system, like say IP, private IP2 is also sending traffic to Google IP, then all these mapping will be maintained into this network table of gateway, right?
Exactly.
So, okay.
But AWS will never tell us like how they are doing it under the hood.
Okay.
So
So this this gateway we are not you have not configured it, it is working by default. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, but in the next step now we need to associate it to our route table to make it work.
Okay.
Prashant, I had one question.
Just a query. If with the elastic IP, it doesn't come in a picture, like network gateway is not needed, internet gateway is not needed for if instance has elastic IP.
So that's what I want to show you with the help of example. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. So tomorrow we are just going to spin up one of the instance in private IP. We will assign a elastic IP to it, and we will see if it's able to communicate to the internet or not. And if you guys have time today, just try to create this private subnet and try to assign it an elastic IP and see if you are able to ping Google after logging to that particular instance.
Okay.
So I will leave up to you
That
guys,
makes
or
sense.
just wait till tomorrow. I will show you guys.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry guys, we just have 3 minutes left, so let me go quickly. So next step is to create a route table, and like I told you guys, once you create a VPC, this route table is created for you by default. So this is one of the route tables which is created for us by default when we created this VPC. Let's create one more route table and let's tell it a name as public RT. Okay, and assign it to our VPC. Okay. So this guy. Now these 2 route tables are assigned to my VPC. Okay, and let me give it a name so that it will be clear to us. Let me tell it a name, default RT. Default RT means the one which is created by VPC for us by default. Now, like I told you guys earlier, just to give a name something to public subnet or private subnet does not make it a public or a private subnet. And to make this route table public, what we need to do is to do the edit route, add a route 0.0/0, and I'm assigning it to the internet gateway. So what I'm doing it now, I'm telling it if there is any traffic which is for this subnet range 10.0.0.0, route it locally. If there's any other traffic except for this subnet range, send it to the internet gateway. And with the internet gateway means to the outside world. Okay, that is clear. And if we are not associating any subnet to the public route table, by default it is associated to the private route table. So this public route table, let's go here, edit subnet association, and like we discussed, now if I'm attaching this subnet to this route table, now this subnet becomes a public subnet 10.1.0. So what, let me show you one more time. So what I did, I added the route of this public route table, which is public RT. I assigned it to the internet gateway. I told him if you are routing any traffic for 10.0, it's fine. But if there's any traffic except for this 10.0.0, send it to the internet gateway. Then if you remember, we have created 2 subnets, 10.1.0.24, 10.0.2.0.24. So what I'm telling it, associate it with this route table. So when we associate this subnet to this route table, now it becomes a public subnet because this route table has a route to the internet. And if there is nothing associated, for example, if you remember that 10.0.2.0, we haven't associated to any subnet, that will be by default become a private route. I know this is a lot to digest. Any question? regarding this?
We got Prashant.
So everything is okay. So again, I have some internet glitches. Okay, so with this, we have created our VPC. We have created our route table. We have associated with the internet gateway. So let's stop at this point, and tomorrow let's start with spinning up our own EC2 instance on this VPC, and then we will go from there. Right.
Yeah, hi Prashant. Yeah, can I get this recording video for that weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to post this video in next 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
Prashant had a question. Do you have any resource that for we can learn about the VPC and stuff? Like I'm very new to networking, so if you can have any resource that a beginner level can refer to, would be very helpful.
Yeah, so the place from where I start learning is the A Cloud Guru. So they have a AWS Associate course, certified associate. I can pin you that resource.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
Yeah, can you post that resource on the group, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll post it now.
Thank you.
Hey Prashant, if you create another VPC, right, in the same region, so then if we want this VPC and the other VPC to talk to each other, then we need to use a VPC pairing, right? They cannot by default communicate with each other, right?
Yes, so by default, I always use VPC pairing, but last year, AWS, last year, they have released something called Transit Gateway.
Okay.
And right now, in all of my environment, I'm using that Transit Gateway heavily. So tomorrow, I'm going to show you guys how to configure the Transit Gateway.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Prashant, just had a last question. So just from getting the high level perspective, correct me if I'm wrong. If I need to deploy an EC2 instance, I need to first set up the VPC, then subnet, then the route tables and internet gateways, right?
Yes, but you can deploy your EC2 instance on the default VPC, and in that case, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, only if you are customizing your own AMI, then you have to do it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me post you these things.
Can you please post your notes as well when you write it down, because I've written down some notes, but it's difficult to catch up when you are writing. So if you can just post your notes as well, will be good enough.
Okay, I have a lot of Medium posts, so I can post you guys. And whatever we are doing it right now, I know it's all manual stuff, but I have the Terraform code. So if anybody wants, I can share the Terraform code with you guys. All these things which we are doing it manually, we can do it with the help of a Terraform.
Oh, okay. Can you do that, please, Prashant?
Please share
Terraform,
that.
that will be, yeah, that will be great.
Posted Terraform code right now.
Yeah, Prashant. No, actually, is there any cost cutting videos you have, like any tutorials you have?
No, man, I have never worked on Kafka, so sorry, no idea about Kafka.
Not a Kafka, cost cutting.
Oh, cost cutting. Okay.
Like
okay.
where is like, yeah.
Okay, cost cutting. I think AWS also have. Let me post you that link. They have a course, like I guess it's a 2 or 3 hour course, where they will show you like how to configure, for example, how can I put it? So in CloudWatch, you can set up the alarms and all those things. So in future,
No,
I'm
that is
planning
also
to take
again
one.
costly, right? That is also like in details. If you are taking like a CloudWatch, detailed CloudWatch, it is also cost, right?
Not detailed CloudWatch. So you can set up alarms. So for example, if you're, let's say I set up a monthly bill of like $3,000. So the moment it crosses the $3,000, you can get an alarm.
Yeah, that is there. But the thing is, until unless we are thinking like we are thinking about this whole bill, it's like a 2 lakh per month, but it is reaching in 6 days.
Yeah, I mean that you need to monitor your instance every day. like I told you guys, based on my experience, I learned this few things via hard way.
Okay.
So there is no silver bullet like how you can do that, but let me ping you that one of the AWS course where they show you like what are the things to consider. Give me 1 minute. Let me post you guys.
Yeah.
Any other question?
You posted this for Terraform, so you already conducted this Terraform course previously, right? It is mentioning day 16. So means all those things you have already covered. It is just like you are just showing from the AWS website, right?
Yes. So earlier I conducted one of the training for Terraform and Docker also in the past. So there we have discussed. There we have discussed in terms of Terraform. Today we are discussing just in terms of AWS.
Okay.
Prashant, you are going to post that in this DevOps group, right? Slack group, right? Those Terraform.
Yeah, I think I already posted it, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I'm not able to find.
I think I got it. Yeah, you have it.
Sorry, anyone have any other question?
Prashant, in industry like you are not going to configure all these things. There will be separate networking team, right? They will do all this configuration, route tables, creating VPCs, subnets, and all. Like we as a DevOps engineer, like we have to know to clear the interview. I do agree, but once you get inside, right, we will be not handling all these things, right? Like that is what my question is.
It depends. So in my case, I deployed all those things from scratch. So I got a help from.
Actually, so most of the organizations we have to do it.
Yes, just to be clear, I take a help from the network team.
To answer this right, it basically depends upon your organization. So how it's going to be. So when you're getting into cloud, you need to make sure you need to know about networking, infra, all those things are kind of basic mandatory stuff. So there is no discrimination stating that DevOps guy will do, network guy will do something like that.
Yeah, so the place where I got a help from the networking team is like when we set up the VPN connection or when we set up the direct connect. So those parts, they are going to take care of it. For example, in case of a VPN connection, you have got those VPN configuration where they need to implement on the router side. So all those things they take care, or while discussing about what CIDR we need to use. But rest of this VPC creation via Terraform or all those things, that part I took care.
So this is the thing for cost cutting, right? That one person has to do multiple jobs, right? So need to have understanding end to end. That's what Prashant, I think you're doing right.
That is how industry is going right now.
Yeah.
Prashant, I have one more question. Like any person who has worked on like AWS, can you adapt to any other different cloud technologies like to Azure or cloud or IBM cloud or Google or Oracle cloud? Is it like a similar or like is it different? Like is the concepts same or is it different?
Yeah, so I don't know about others, but I started learning Google Cloud, and most of the concepts they are same, except for like the terminology they are a little bit different. So if you know AWS, it's much easier for you to pick up other technology.
Because I am going to work on IBM cloud, so that is what I'm bit confused now. Because I was working on AWS, like I will be getting into IBM cloud with other project now. So do I need to learn or like this concept is more than enough? That is what I need to know.
That's what I'm saying. There are some specific terms which you need to learn, but in most of the cases they are almost same. And I think last time there's someone who asked me the same question regarding a Terraform. So if I know Terraform for AWS, can I implement the same thing for GCP or for Azure? The answer is up to some extent, yes. But as you know that Google Cloud, they provide a different APIs. So the code which I wrote for AWS is definitely not going to work for Google Cloud. You need to change that code. So answer is yes and no. But if you know one of the cloud, it's similar to a programming language. If you know one language, it's easier for you to pick other language.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I post one of this training link, which I found really useful. It's called Well Architect one. I'm still need to find out the training. There's one more training which is specific to this cost related term. So if I found it out today, I will post in that Slack channel.
Yep. Thank you, Prashant.
Any other question?
No.
Okay, guys. Then thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Prashant.
Tomorrow session it might be 1.5 hours so that I can cover all those concepts. But thank you so much, guys, for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prashant. Good night. Have a good day.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Prashant.
Thank you. Bye.